Let's get into some trade stuff. According to multiple reports, Garrett Crochet has some demands if he's going to be moved at the deadline here that's coming up at 3 p.m. Pacific on July 30th. Uh, According to several reports, Ken Rosenthal, I think John Heyman might have even been first to sort of break this news. Alden Gonzalez or somebody definitely from ESPN as well was part of it. Says Crochet not only wants to remain a starter to finish out the season if he's traded, but he also wants to be signed to a contract extension in order to pitch in the playoffs. Blake, how surprising is this sort of development? And I know we've kind of texted a little bit about this, so I might not necessarily be setting you up properly for what you're going to share.
Well, to answer that, I think it's surprising that it's come out. You don't really hear stuff like this from players. Most of them, when they're talking to the media or giving their statements, it's like, I just want to win, do whatever to help the team. But for Crochet, I think it makes a lot of sense for him. If teams are going to talk about baseball and players as a business that they can move on from at any point, and I think it's the player's right to also say, well, then if you're going to treat us like it's a business, then we're going to treat it like a business as well. And I would like to be paid if you're going to potentially ruin my career for the next 3 or 4 months. So it's definitely a topic that's going to leave a lot of people upset with him, probably. But I think deep down, like a lot of players are going to agree with his stance, even if they don't necessarily come out and publicly support it because they don't want to be seen as like a villain kind of thing, because it's not popular with fans when you say like I'm more focused on the money than winning or anything like that. But I think there's a lot of support from players for his decision here, and it makes sense for him personally. It's disappointing for teams, but there's an easy way to fix that. You give him his contract extension and you have him run out there for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think there are a couple key points here. One, Crochet has already thrown 111 and a third innings this season, which is far and away his career high. He's coming off of Tommy John surgery. His first season as a full-time starting pitcher is this year. He's under team control through the 2026 season. He is on a proverbial sort of innings limit, which makes like not necessarily wanting to go to the bullpen sort of interesting to kind of manage his workload. And another thing too, I did see some comments like it does seem, I thought I saw some clarification that this isn't even necessarily Crochet's agency pushing that these sentiments are kind of coming from Crochet himself. I can understand and I can reconcile the notion that, hey, sticking to my starter routine is what's going to sort of keep me healthy. I think I know from covering the Dodgers that if they were to trade for him and stick him in the bullpen, it wouldn't be a situation where they're all of a sudden going to have him pitching back-to-back days or twice in 3 days, stuff like that. I think they still would certainly take care of him. Now, I can't speak to every other team having that same approach, so maybe that's why he's putting this stuff out there, depending on where he ends up going. The other factor is there was already kind of the reports of how to value Crochet at the trade deadline. The White Sox are obviously going to try to sell him as an elite starting pitcher to ask for more in return. But before these demands even came out, I think there were some teams looking at him saying, hey, like you're on an innings limit. You've already thrown the most you have. You're coming off Tommy John surgery. Like you might have to be a relief pitcher. And at that point, we're not necessarily giving up as much for you. What impact do you, so considering that was already out there, what impact do you think now Crochet's reported demands might have on the likelihood of a trade?
I think it decreases them because it takes a lot of teams out of the potential bidding for him. There's not going to be a lot of teams that want to sign him to a contract at this point. Like maybe the Dodgers could do it, the Astros, the Yankees could do it, the Phillies could do it. But that's limiting yourself to 4 or 5 teams instead of 10, 15, even 20 teams. And especially when you get into the off season and that kind of opens up for every team to go create a bidding war. I think the White Sox are going to be a little more patient and open to waiting for that point now. But from Crochet's standpoint, he's making $800,000 this year, and according to Fangraphs, which comes up with a money value for how much a player's worth to their team, he's at $33 million. So, like, he is outperforming the actual dollar amount that he's making, like, by an insane amount. So, I think he has every right to say, like, if you want to risk my career and put my arm in jeopardy and potentially prevent me from making the contract and money I deserve down the line, then you should reward me now and I'll come in and I'll risk it all to help you try and win. So I think that's really fair for him. I don't have any problems with him saying or doing that. I mean, it's a business. That's what teams always say. They'll cut players as soon as something goes wrong and not protect them or back them up or anything and just move on at the first notice. So I think the player should also have that right to demand that. And it's just business. Like that's what they all say. So good for Crochet, in my opinion. And hopefully he gets what he wants, and hopefully it's the Dodgers doing it.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say to kind of we'll put a bow on this conversation and move on. Uh, what's interesting is to me, I don't necessarily see these demands as scaring away a team like the Dodgers. I think they would be more than willing, assuming it's a fair market deal and they're not having to significantly overpay or something. I think they'd be more than happy to work out an extension with Crochet to lock in, like, okay, we're going to get this, we have this starter moving forward for 3 more years, 4 more years, whatever it might be, 5 more years, maybe, because like I said, he is under team control through 2026 via salary arbitration. Uh, so yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if the Dodgers still move ahead with that. I think for the Dodgers, my belief is the biggest obstacle would be is if they trust that he can be a starter this year still. And, maybe they keep him as a starter, but skip a turn in the rotation once or twice to finish out the season rather than put him in the bullpen. So, I could say I don't think this necessarily scares off the Dodgers as much as I do agree with you. It does further complicate any sort of Crochet trade with any team, coupled with the fact that the White Sox might not even decide to sell at the deadline anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it would affect the Dodgers, but it could potentially push them to say, like, hey, maybe let's just focus on Jack Flaherty, where we don't have to go give the contract and we still think we're going to get an impact there. So I don't think the Dodgers would necessarily be scared off of paying Crochet an extension, but it might sway them a little if they were kind of deciding between what deal to make.
Yeah. Final part of the Crochet discussion. Todd Garman has a super chat, which thank you for this, Todd. He says, "Are you boys willing to let Stone go in a package for Crochet?"
I think if Robert was included, I would say yes. I think if it's just Crochet, I'd probably say no. And if this was an off-season deal, I'd be more open to it. But the Dodgers really need starting pitching right now, so it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to trade a starter to go get a starter. I think it would improve them, and I'm for selling on Gavin Stone and the right deal. And maybe it is something like they did in the offseason when they traded Pepio for Glasnow, but it came with an extension, and they wouldn't have moved Pepio without getting that extension from Glasnow. So maybe that is something that comes into play. I would just be a little surprised at this point if they did end up trading a starter for a starter because they need pitching, and that's why they're trading for a starter.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I feel like we were in the same position a year ago where I was saying the Dodgers can't trade from their rotation to just to swap pitchers, basically. That being said, if it's Gavin Stone for Crochet plus something, I could be talked into it. But to your point, if it's basically just kind of a swap, I think that becomes a little bit problematic.